So we'll move on to item 4 on the agenda, and this is a progress report around body-worn video. Clearly, it is topical in the light of the incident on the 2nd of January. But just to put this into some context, so as you'll probably be aware, that I set up an internal transformation fund more than 2 years ago, where from that fund more than £2 million was made available to support this particular project in the rolling out of body-worn cameras and videos to uniformed patrol officers. There are quite a few reasons behind that in terms of operational effectiveness, looking to gather evidence around domestic abuse, domestic violence incidents, for example, around achieving early guilty pleas where the evidence supports that, and is seen as a very progressive use of new technology in modern policing. So you've provided the report, thanks for that. Would you like to take us through that in terms of the main highlights? Tim?
Yeah, if I can, Commissioner, thank you. So the current position is with 2,000 cameras that have been purchased, and they're issued now on a pool basis to all our frontline staff, excluding special constables at the moment, and I'll come to that towards the end of the report. The rollout obviously began in May 2016, and we should complete it, well, it'll just touch into May this year, not April 2017, but we're there or thereabouts. The cameras are fully encrypted and all the data is secured securely on our DEM system, which you can access from anywhere on the force terminals. The system's set up so that non-evidential footage is deleted after 31 days, but obviously we keep evidential footage in line with the force policy and the national guidelines. Again, automatically the cameras are docked and then they automatically download, wipe and charge, so it's a self-sufficient system. Just regarding the training then, there's 3 parts to the training for all users. They get a pre-read on eLearn, then there's the 3-hour session which teaches them actually how to use the camera, and then we've further online support available. There's been extensive consultation developed with community groups, and that's led into that policy and training, and we've obviously been helped by the College of Policing, the IPCC, Commissioner's Office and the Surveillance Commissioner's Office, so there's been a number of impacts there. To update you as to where we are now, Bradford, Calderdale, Kirklees and Protective Services operations are now fully rolled out. All non-firearms taser officers have been prioritised, and so they're all now issued cameras, as are the off-road motorcyclists in Leeds and Wakefield. And the full rollout in Leeds has just commenced this month, and that will be followed by Wakefield and Protective Services Crime, which should then complete that full rollout. And 700 cameras we estimate are currently deployed at the minute. They have been well received. You mentioned in your introduction the things that they've been used for. One of the additional benefits we've found is they're a really exceptional tool for gleaning intelligence, and that's helped both in resolving complaints and also having them withdrawn. It's difficult at this time to say, right, here's a specific example of where it's evidenced a guilty plea or a victimless prosecution, but both the CPS and the courts are giving us positive feedback on that. There were, and I think you alluded to in your introduction, a number of technical issues which just sort of delayed our implementation slightly. One of the main issues was a battery issue which caused a number of cameras to overheat, and that affected the rollout in Bradford and Calderdale, where we had to halt that rollout. Fortunately, the suppliers upgraded the 2,000 cameras now so that we've a greater battery capacity, and that's from a different supplier, and that was clearly at no additional cost to West Yorkshire Police. So that gave us a 3-month delay in the rollout. Now we've managed to swap all the cameras in Calderdale and Bradford. The rollout is now back virtually on schedule, and I mentioned earlier that we've equipped all the taser officers. You mentioned firearms officers, and obviously they don't currently use the body-worn video, as when the camera's positioned, the current camera's positioned, it wouldn't record the footage because the firearm that they're using or aiming will cover the camera, and it also hinders the officer when they're trying to aim the weapon. So there's a National Police Chief Council recommendation that's going to move towards a head-mounted camera, and we're currently in procurement discussions on that at the moment. I think you're aware that there's a regional approach to that in the Yorkshire and Humber, and later this year companies are going to come and showcase and demonstrate the products, and then we'll shortlist and a trial to identify the best product. The rollout of the full quota of cameras, it says there in April 2017, I think it just slips into May ever so slightly, but it's pretty much on schedule. The suppliers agreed to deliver the niche integration with the DEMS, which means that we can access footage directly from a link in the crime report, which will assist in the future, and then that leads us into a digital portal which will enable, we can send footage there straight to the CPS and other third parties for them to review, and that will obviously assist in early guilty pleas. Finally, special constables are going to be considered once that rollout is complete, and there is a plan for them to be issued with for future pull cameras. I think that concludes the main body of the report, Commissioner, unless there's any questions you may have.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I have some follow-up. Sorry, could you just clarify in terms of the acronyms around niche and DEMS?
Niche is the Force Crime Recording System, and DEMS is the system.
It's the back office system that captures all the footage once it's downloaded. So it's a digital asset management system.
Thank you. Thanks for that.
My apologies for slipping into police acronyms.
Okay, so absolutely yes. When I established that transformation fund and considered the business cases against this, I was clear around looking to achieve the benefits around supporting victims and witnesses, for example, and trying to reduce the numbers of victims required to attend court as one of the benefits of that. And as you've said, allowing officers to gather evidence which leads to better criminal justice outcomes and protection for officers as well, for that matter. And also, if there are any complaints made against officers, if it is captured on body-worn video, then these things can be quickly resolved, hopefully one way or another. So the first question then is, the report mentions that body-worn videos have generally been well received by the police and the public. And it's, I guess, how we tackle some of the issues around perhaps some of the more negative headlines, both internally and externally.
I think that the first thing internally is that the push is definitely that the cameras are to use as a learning tool rather than a performance management tool. And so that's that cultural acceptance that we're going to use them in that way has been key to the acceptance by staff, so they're seen as helping rather than a stick to beat somebody with. There are, as you've said, it's the benefits of malicious complaints being dealt with quickly and resolved. Having viewed the footage has also emphasised the positive aspects there. Externally, where we've dip sampled, members of the public can often be here to give a positive response when they're told that that the cameras are being used, and we've not had any single objection where an officer said, right, we're turning on the body-worn video. Nobody's been heard to object to that happening as yet. And also in a wider stakeholder group, independent advisory groups have had presentations at Kirklees, Calderdale at Bradford, and indeed at the Force Ag. And again, all of those presentations have been positively received, with the benefits being reassured. So again, it's about us getting across the message that when it's used, a verbal warning will be given, and it's emphasising that the footage is securely and stored safely.
Yeah, so it's fair to say that the more conversations you have where you're able to explain about the processes and the procedures, and the benefits to victims and witnesses, that it goes down well once that's been done.
Yeah, and I think it's about that positive reinforcement of that communication we need to continue to do.
Yeah, thank you for that. The next question, and you touched on it, Tim, in your update. I appreciate it might be too early to talk about specifics around evidence of early guilty pleas, for example, or so-called victimless prosecutions. But can you say more about the positive feedback from the CPS, Crown Prosecution Service, and the Court Service?
Yes, certainly the judiciary have indicated to us very recently that early decisions in domestic violence cases are more likely to be made where the body-worn video was available at an early stage. So if we can get that footage quickly into the court process, then we're more likely to resolve the issue, which, as you say, gives better outcomes for victims and witnesses. If you can get that footage available, it enables the prosecution, defence and CPS to all contextualise what happens. And I suppose the best real life, and I accept it's anecdotal evidence, but the best real life example is a Rhodes policing sergeant who was dealing with a collision, and a member of the public comes up and unconnected and starts to give out a load of racial abuse. He's told he's being filmed, he continues despite numerous warnings. He's arrested, taken to court, and then he actually pleads guilty at court. And he's never been known to plead guilty before, despite unfortunately having a criminal history with ourselves. So that's an anecdotal example where it's worked positively for us.
Right. Thanks for that. And just a little bit of extra feedback. So I was at the Magistrates Court in Leeds a couple of weeks ago, and they were absolutely very positive around wanting to embrace fully the evidence captured around body-worn videos because of the the early guilty pleas that can be achieved. And it was very evident to me on that visit that sadly a lot of the cases they are dealing with are domestic violence, domestic abuse, which clearly officers on a daily basis turn up to these incidents, and the more we can intervene and stop this cycle of behaviour, then that's absolutely what we should be aiming to do. So, I was pleased with that feedback from the visit. The next question, in relation to firearms officers and the national solutions that have been worked upon, do we have a time frame or any concept of how long that might take? And will it apply to all firearms officers?
Certainly, the MPCC recommendation that all firearms officers, overt firearms officers, should wear body-worn video came late last year in 2016. We've been working with regional forces to try and get a solution, and now all four in the Yorkshire and Humber are now in that process. It's delayed that a little, but we're now moving forward. We should be able to get learn from pilots that are happening elsewhere, so that it's difficult to give you a firm timescale at the moment. The best I can give you, I suppose, is the second quarter of this year. It is the best timescale or a realistic time frame to have that take place. There are regular meetings. I can assure you that it's not been sat there waiting. The next one's on the 31st of January, where the technical specification of actually that will be progressed. As I say, it's a different camera to the one we've got at the moment. Regarding all officers, it will be all over firearms officers. Nationally, we're still looking at options regarding covert firearms deployments.
So I think, to be fair, Commissioner, nationally we've come to a position where armed response vehicles, armed police officers, we're all in agreement that they need to be 24/7 routinely wearing body-worn video with audio and video capture. The stumbling block at this moment in time is the physical piece of kit to get it helmet mounted, and as soon as we overcome that, we'll move forward with that. The next phase of it is then the covert firearms environment. But as with all covert policing and law enforcement techniques, there's other legislative responsibilities and other pieces of law that will be difficult to us putting recording devices into that environment. I think suffice to say we're all in agreement that for the benefit of the public, for the benefit of the police officers, with the transparency and accountability of policing, it is our strategic intention to go in that direction. But again, once we can get the right solutions in place. So it's a really positive step forward with the armed policing environment in uniform, and we've certainly got a direction of travel for the covert world. But it's slightly bigger than just the covert firearms officers, the whole environment around that world. For each individual case, you know, it's important to them and their family, and of course, there will be debate and discussion over the coming months and years. But the vast majority of deployments are in the overt armed policing environments. That's a really good step forward, I think.
Yeah, no, thanks for that clarification. And you know, I'm very clear about the process we've been on in West Yorkshire regarding the rollout of the body-worn videos that you've given the update on in terms of the progress report. And as you have said, that is still being rolled out across the policing districts of West Yorkshire. Clearly the issue of firearms officers that you have just explained, John, is being worked upon at a national and regional level. But clearly these are questions that will be posed, I'm sure, during the course of the coming sort of months throughout this year. But I'm grateful for that update in clarifying that position. I think you may have already answered the other question I was looking to ask, but it's just really confirmation about the timing of the West Yorkshire rollout of the original programme to frontline officers.
Yeah, as I mentioned, it slipped slightly, and just checking the notes, it's the 11th of May, so we've slipped by 11 days, but there are no anticipated issues to take us beyond that at the moment.
No, the only thing that can get in our way is further technical issues, but we don't see any at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say you've done well to recapture that time, given some of the technical issues with the batteries, and having to replace some of those cameras at no cost as well, which is important. But yeah, I mean, I do look forward to seeing the overall impact and results of body-worn cameras and video as we move forward, working with our partners in the criminal justice arena, but more importantly for outcomes for victims and witnesses, and of course for the officers themselves. So I don't have any more questions on that unless you've got anything.
No, I think it is. Yeah. We've acknowledged before, Commissioner, that it is probably one of the most significant changes in policing nationally, but certainly in West Yorkshire, in terms of being able to combat criminality, support victims and witnesses, provide transparency of policing actions, and support the officers in their learning and their engagement with the public. So it is part of a cultural change for us and for the public to be used to the lifetime video and recording. So we're grateful for the support we've had from yourself in able to put the force in what I consider is to be one of the most progressive rollout phases and get ahead of the game in that sense.
Yeah, no, thanks very much. And when I meet with my other police and crime commissioner colleagues, these are things we do collectively discuss. So it's always useful to compare notes with what's going on elsewhere as well. But thank you for that update report.